If you've been scrolling through endless monitor comparisons, juggling screen real estate versus desk space, and still feel stuck on whether a super wide panel is worth the hype, this review is here to clear the fog. I've been in the same spot trying to decide if a 49-inch curve can actually make my spreadsheets, video edits, and endless tabs feel less cramped without turning my workspace into a cockpit. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When Dell launched the U4924DW, they called it the world's first 49-inch dual QHD monitor. That headline alone makes you picture a massive canvas that could replace a dual monitor rig, but the real question is how it behaves once you actually plug it in. I spent a solid week swapping my two 27-inch 1440p panels for this single, curved beast, and I'm going to walk through what that felt like from the moment I unpacked it to the end of a full workday. First off, the physical presence. The curve is pronounced enough that it pulls the edges of the screen toward you without feeling like you're looking at a fishbowl. For anyone who spends 8 to 10 hours in front of a monitor, that gentle wrap reduces the need to constantly swivel your neck. I noticed my shoulders stayed a bit more relaxed while scrolling across a long Excel sheet because the visual flow stayed consistent. You're not fighting a hard edge that forces you to refocus every time you jump from column A to column Z. The resolution, 5120 by 1440, essentially gives you two 1440p displays side by side, but it's not just a split-screen gimmick. In practice, I could have my video editing timeline stretched across the left half, a color-graded preview on the center, and a set of reference notes on the right, all without the distracting bezels that come with a true dual-monitor setup. The IPS panel kept colors accurate enough for color grading work, and the brightness was ample for a well-lit office. What surprised me, though, was how the extra width affected multitasking with everyday tools. My email client stayed anchored in a narrow column, while a web browser with dozens of tabs sprawled out, each tab readable without having to zoom in. Now, let's talk connections because they can be a deal-breaker. Dell gave the U4924DW two HDMI ports and a USB-C input that carries video, data, and power. If you're using a recent laptop with USB-C, you can power the notebook and drive the monitor with a single cable, which declutters the desk dramatically. For my setup, I ran a single USB-C from a Dell XPS to the monitor, and everything display, mouse, keyboard worked through the monitor's downstream USB ports. That meant I could leave the laptop in a dockless state and still have a wired network connection via the monitor's Ethernet jack, a feature I didn't anticipate but ended up loving for quick file transfers. However, there are hidden trade-offs. The sheer size means you need a fairly deep desk. The monitor's stand sits about 10 inches out, so if your desk is shallow, you'll either have to push it back or tilt it more aggressively, which can affect viewing comfort. Also, the panel's pixel density is lower than a true 4K screen, so at close viewing distances text can look slightly less crisp than on a 27-inch 1440p monitor. If you're the type who sits just a foot away, you may notice that fine detail isn't as razor-sharp as you'd expect from a higher pixel-punch display. The trade-off is that you gain massive horizontal real estate, which is the core promise of this monitor. Power consumption is another practical point. A 49-inch IPS panel draws noticeably more wattage than a typical 27-inch screen, so if you're watching your electricity bill or using a power-limited workspace, factor that in. It's not a nightmare drain, but it's something you'll feel if you leave it on for long stretches without sleep mode. Who should buy this? If you're a content creator, data analyst, or software developer who regularly works with multiple windows side by side, the curve and width translate into a tangible productivity boost. I found that I could keep a code editor, a live preview, and a terminal open simultaneously without ever needing to Alt-Tab. The monitor also shines for video editors who want to keep a timeline, a full-size preview, and reference material on screen at once. Gamers who enjoy immersive racing or flight sims appreciate the curvature, though the refresh rate isn't geared for high-end competitive play. It's more of a casual, visually rich experience. On the flip side, if you're primarily a mobile professional who moves between co-working spaces, the monitor's footprint makes it a poor fit. It's also not the best choice for someone who values pixel-perfect sharpness for graphic design at a very close distance, because the lower PPI means fine lines aren't as crisp as they would be on a smaller, higher-density screen. Budget-conscious shoppers should also be aware that the price point sits well above standard 27-inch panels, so you need to be sure the extra width will actually replace multiple